This is Giles Edwards for 366 Weird Movies, sitting down with Tim van Dammen, whose not feature debut, but second film premiered here at Fantasia last night to a full house of very appreciative fans. So, hello, Tim.
Hey.
Now, I imagine you're pleased with the reaction that this has gotten at Fantasia so far. Did you?
It's amazing. The audience is so engaged, and to just to see, I really thought it was quite like a local film, and to see it translate, to the other side of the world as well. It's quite. It's strange, but it's awesome strange.
Did you also watch the audience on today's screening of the movie?
Yeah.
Comparable reaction, I hope?
Yeah, they're laughing and cheering, and it was really quite. I don't really know how to explain the way it makes me feel, but it feels good.
Well, I'll definitely say very well deserved because, as I said, Mega Time Squad was a whole lot of fun. The main character, Johnny, wonderfully realized, and especially something I imagine you had to make sure he was a solid character, particularly as you eventually see 4, 5, and 6 of him wandering around and talking amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Now, you're also the writer of this movie.
Yep.
In regards to, I guess, continuity, did that pose any particular challenge for you to make sure everything locked up nicely, or did you just sort of, like Johnny, kind of wing it? And
no, I had sort of a strict set of rules about it, and everything was planned out. And the idea was, as his character time travels more and more, he becomes more and more jaded and more cynical, and he wants to time travel less and less until he eventually decides to take matters into his own hands. So for Anton to be able to play all those different variations, each version of him is not seemingly a whole new character, it's the same character, just slightly more irritated. That was like a really important thing to do, yeah.
Now, the city that the movie takes place in, what was the name of that again?
Thames.
Okay, so I knew you're from Thames, and I was pretty sure I remembered it that way. I just wanted to make sure for my own remarks about the movie that I wrote up last night. Thames, I looked it up, as of 2006, a population of not quite 7,000. I imagine
that's right.
They haven't had much of a boom since then.
No. It's a small town, and when I was writing the movie, I was living there and working at the it's like a supermarket.
Yeah.
And I just sort of, when I was coming up with the idea, then I thought, well, you've got like time travel, this like high concept idea, and then you set it in Thames, this sort of like very sort of, I don't want to say parochial because it's condescending, but it's like, it's got its own thing going on, and once I started pairing that up and all the opportunities that it sort of presented, I couldn't really think of doing it anywhere else, so, and it sort of plays into the main character's sort of modest aspiration to move to the neighbouring town,
What's the population of that neighboring town?
I think it's actually smaller.
Oh, cozier for him and his new girlfriend. That would be cute. The crime kingpin fellow. Now, is that based on anyone? Does Thames actually have a crime scene to speak of?
No. That's Thames has a hospital, a supermarket, and a parole office. So it's a strange sort of cross-section of people moving through there. And because it's landlocked due to mountains and a big estuary, so there's not much, it's all sort of crammed in together. And a lot of older people move there because of the hospital, so you have a lot of retirees, and then you have like the parole office and all the stuff that brings, and then you have like the regular people that work at the pack and save and at the supermarket, and it's just an interesting mix, you know. Living there and working there, I just wanted to capture sort of try to capture a bit of that, the way that we would talk to each other while we were there, because I was living with my dad there, and working at I was spending a lot of time in the butchery, working in the butchery at the supermarket, and the way that we sort of speak has that certain sort of vulgar rhythm to it.
Yeah, it had a very genuine feel, all the dialogue with the low-level crooks interacting with each other. It all felt, obviously it was very funny, but also felt very natural, that, you know, I could see these people talking this way and, you know, living the lives that they were living there.
Yeah, to me that was really important to capture the sort of cadence of the way that Kiwis speak. Because I feel like a lot of times when you're working in a country like New Zealand, where we have quite a specific accent and cadence, and then you work on a script, and the script is written for an American voice, or a voice that's not yours, and then people play out those scenes, and then they say, oh, that's bad acting. And it's almost never bad acting. It's almost always just, no, that's not how we speak. You have to change the line to match the way Kiwis speak and the kind of words we use and the way that we express ourselves. Otherwise it's going to come across as either bad acting, or it's just going to be a bit false. Mm-hmm. So even in the film, there's a lot of like quite hesitant wooden lines, and that's a real thing. Like that, you know, that's real, and I love that. You know what I mean? It's like, because it's like that's how a lot of people speak. They're quite reserved and thinking what they're saying is they're saying it sort of like this, you know, like trying to catch up. So I wanted to try and get that sort of feel across that makes it feel specific and local and honest, you know. Yeah,
well, I'd say my familiarity with New Zealand cinema is admittedly limited, but it definitely felt, as I said, like real people doing their real thing.
Yeah.
Get back to the crime boss briefly. Yeah. That was probably the biggest name.
Yeah.
In the movie, the actor who
Johnny Gruff,
who is probably the most widely known of the casting there. What piqued his interest in the movie? Because I imagine he was probably harder to get than other actors.
No, Johnny's just an awesome guy, you know. I just asked him, and he's busy. You know, he was doing TV shows, so he was doing a big TV show all week and Saturdays and everything, and then he would go straight from there to come onto set to work on this film, and he would do it all night, and he would like nap in between and get up and then do his scenes and bring this insane energy, and then he'd like go back. And Johnny's a sweetheart. Like he's I was like really stoked that he wanted to do it and excited that he wanted to do it, because he's perfect for that character. Like he's just got, and that character, and what's funny about it is that character is nothing like Johnny. Johnny's like a genuinely like empathetic, nice, you know, really good dude, and then it's like you have this awful sort of bigoted crime boss who's just like constantly swearing, but the way Johnny's cadence fits that perfectly, and his natural sense of like he's quite polite, and bringing that in there as well just adds this sort of like this offset that I think brings that character to life a lot.
Yeah, he definitely stands out from pretty much all the rest of the cast. Are obviously, I guess I'll say normal people.
Yeah.
And somehow this low-rent psycho has swanned in to, you know, make it his town.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he
obviously.
gives a pretty big performance in the movie, I think. It's really quite, it's cool.
Now, probably not him, but other people in the movie, are they based on people you know, or?
Yeah, some are, some aren't, but they're based on friends of mine. Some of them are more like myself, and it was important for me to sort of, even though it's like this mean-spirited like comedy where people are always being mean to each other all the time, and I wanted to still capture that sense of people still understand each other, and so when all the gang's coming after him and stuff, and he's like, fair enough, I would probably come after me too, and he's always defending the bad guy and stuff like that, which is that's, I just have friends like that they're in terrible, like, well, if they always defend the guy who's like trying to attack them, because they sort of like, I get it.
I caught that, because other than the main bad guy, there wasn't anyone that I couldn't sort of relate to and see that they're not necessarily liking what they're doing, but they sort of in their context have to, and are doing the best they can as people to
And we did have a whole sequence at the beginning of the film that sort of explores more about what's going on before the film starts, so you get a sense of the dynamics between the different characters and what the existing sort of hierarchy is. But when we were watching it down, we were just like, we just want to just start the story, like just get it in there. So we sort of like cut that right down, and we sort of like try and play into it retrospectively with the way try and bring that to life through the interactions that I have later.
Yeah, I was particularly impressed in regards to that. The introductory sequence where you see the character Johnny, he's starting his day of work. He's just so excited. He's got his little garage door closed, already wandering around collecting the debts from everyone, and he seems genuinely happy being the sort of bottom rung of this criminal ladder until things go sideways and greed sort of knocks everyone askew there. But, definitely, you made him you made Johnny very relatable. From the get-go, and I thought that was impressive how you did that in a matter of it was just like a couple minutes with the little opening kind of montage.
Well, a lot of that is down to Luke, the editor, he said, because the film used to start, like I call it the start, the first sort of plot point, I suppose, where it kicks off when they decide to steal the money. That used to happen at around about like maybe the 12 to 15 minute mark, and Luke said, I reckon I can start it at 3 minutes. And I was like, bullshit, you can't start it at 3 minutes. And he's like, watch this. And then he sends it to me, and I'm like, does this work? And I'm like, oh my god, this works. And I was like, hats off.
Yeah, that was...
Thanks, Kayla.
Okay, so, that was definitely to set the mood very early on about what kind of movie we were all going to be seeing, and the tone carried nicely throughout the entire thing.
Cool.
I did a little bit of research before this. Your preceding movie, take on Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, it was. I was like more like a higher-on director for that one. So I used to be a video artist before that, and then I became a music video director. So I used to do hundreds of music videos, and we. As a result of that, I think I was the most prolific one in New Zealand, probably by a long way. So I was hired to do an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet for the screen that was all sung. It was an opera, but it was the original Shakespearean dialogue. But because it has iambic pentameter, so it fits into music quite well. And so that's what that movie was, and it had a similarly sort of parochial setting in a caravan park, or what you would call
Trailer
here
park.
a trailer park. But see, in New Zealand, trailer parks are like where you go on holiday. Like you have, like, so there's a beach and everyone takes their caravan to the beach. So it's quite strange seeing that film go around the world and people think it's a trailer park, like, you know, like Trailer Park Boys, or like some sort of like as if it's a socio-economic thing, and it's not. In New Zealand, like,
It's
that's
people
what
on
you
holiday.
do, like that's a normal thing, you know what I mean? So it was strange seeing that be reread in different ways, and so in France it was read as like, they thought it was a comment on Romanian gypsies and stuff, and it's like, and they started reading with those politics into it, and I was like, no, this is like some holiday, like it's just, and I was like, no, I don't want to get political, please. So it's like, it was interesting seeing that.
And is that where you met the actor who played the main character? Because I know he's cast as Benvolio.
Well, we used to do music a lot, and so I sort of knew him on and off through that, and then he came and he played Benvolio in that film, and I really, really liked him, and so I thought, so when I was writing this film and I was thinking, because originally I was going to think, can I do a film with just one character, one actor that plays all the characters, and so I thought, well, if anyone can do that, it's probably Anton. So I went and met up with Anton and I told him about the early ideas, and he was like, cool, let's do it. And then I just sort of developed the script over a certain amount of time, and we rehearsed a lot, and I shot a lot of it just on my phone and did like basic roto so that we could like get an idea of how to block the different scenes and if they were working, and would it be better if he sat here or did this, or, and then once we got a feel for how it was going to work, then and also rewriting dialogue particularly for the way Anton spoke, so that everything felt nice and normal and natural. Then we had this small window of opportunity where my friends were available to, because I have a little group of friends that we did music videos with, you know, like, and so everyone was available for this like really short window, and so we were like, okay, let's just go, let's just do it. So I didn't have time to do like pre-production or much prepping at all. It was just like, okay, on the day, how am I going to do this? All right, and then we just work it out.
For the half a dozen or so Johnnies that develop over the course of the movie, it almost seemed like you might have worked each of them from the ground up, because they're obviously all the same person,
Yeah.
but they immediately show different, as if they're different variations
Yeah.
of each other. And I was curious, I guess, how you filmed that, because there are, a bunch of close-up shots where you have the three or more of them standing together, and they're
Yeah.
all sounding different enough that even if someone wasn't watching it, it would be like three different people.
Yeah.
How did you capture that?
Well, it was about, so the guy who's going through it for the first time is sort of excited, and then the guy who's going through the second time is sort of helping the other one. Then you got the guy going through the third time who's a little bit like, come on, can we get on with it? And then you've got the guy who's going through it the fourth time he's quite pissed off. And then you've got the guy who's going through it the fifth time who just doesn't care anymore. And so we sort of tried to play those subtle sort of like variations into each version of the character. And so the script was labelled, I used to have it labelled which John was speaking, like 1, 2, 3, 4, so it'd be John 1, John 2, John 3. But then what I tried to do is then remove that, try and just do it in the dialogue. So I removed all the numbers from the script and see if we could tell which one it was just from what they were saying. And if we could do that, then I knew it would sort of start to, we'd have that separation of character.
There's a question that just I know New Zealand is very close to China, and I know there, politically speaking, there are a number of concerns in New Zealand about infiltration isn't quite the word I'm looking for, but increased like property being bought up by various
Yeah.
Chinese magnates. So is that sort of what made them a sort of an easy go-to for the exotic element that shows up?
Well, there is like a substantial Chinese community in New Zealand, and there has been a lot for a long time, which goes all the way back to when Thames was originally a gold mining town, and so a lot of Chinese came and mined for gold, and so there's a legitimately long line of Chinese in there, and I thought, well, I remember when I was working as a projectionist, I remember coming out of work one night and there was just an arm lying on the ground with a bloody pool, and then the cops came and took it, and I was just wondering what was going on, and they said that some guy had like come and it was like a Chinese gang thing, and they were fighting, and one guy pulled out a sword, and they were fighting each other with this sword, and he chopped the other guy's arm off. And so that always sort of stuck with me. I was like, it's sort of cool because in New Zealand when we see like gang stuff, it's normally, there's like a few gangs in New Zealand, like the Mongrel Mob or the Headhunters or these sort of things which are, they're really, how would you say it? They're like established long-term institutions, whereas, and they're all, it's like they verge on just being, they're just like a whole nother set of laws, you know what I mean? So you have the English, what do they call it, British common law, and then you have the law of the gangs, and they sort of like, the gangs, they all sort of stick to themselves and not too much like coming into your house sort of thing, you know what I mean? But this that thing about the finding that arm just stuck with me, and I just thought, well, maybe I should have like a Chinese gang in there, and it is like in the news a lot and in the public mind with. So I sort of wanted to play on that as a joke, like how the whole thing about the movies is going for the Chinese money, which is what a lot of Kiwis try and do. They try and like get the Chinese money because there's so many investors coming into New Zealand, and they're buying land and they're starting businesses and doing all these things, and there seems to be a bit of a scramble to get the Chinese money because it's such a huge superpower, and it's so I sort of wanted to distill that down into like a bit of a joke, where it's a pink handbag with a few bucks in it that everyone's chasing around because it's the Chinese money.
I guess also speaking of the Chinese, the legendary demon, is that based on anything?
Yeah, that's a real thing. So I wanted it to be, so the Telltale is what it's called, and it's a demon that normally appears on like cups or plates, and it's the demon of like greed and gluttony, that's supposed to remind you not to be too greedy. And so that's sort of like where I drew that idea from, and that's all. So that I wanted it to be a real thing, particularly when you're dealing with like a culture that I'm not super familiar with, like the Chinese culture. So I wanted to like at least do enough to make sure that I wasn't just like making shit up, and so. And it was important to some of the actors that it was accurate and stuff like that, which of course, so it is all based on a real thing.
And to rewind back to a remark you made earlier, you were talking about how there was this very narrow window in which everyone was available.
Yeah.
How long was shooting for this?
Well, probably just over 3 weeks, and then we came back later and did a few other exterior shots, and then we did the final couple of just tiny little bits and pieces that we needed, like close up of this and that, about a year later once the edit had come through, because the edit was you had to, in order to even be able to edit the film, you had to build the effect shots first, because otherwise you can't cut, because you can't just cut to a scene with one guy. And you know what I mean? So it was like, it was a really long process of back and forthing with the effects and then the edits, and then choosing a take for each person and working it around. It was quite cumbersome.
Well, you pulled it off very nicely, and it was good to learn a bit more about the feature. And I guess, in closing, there's a question I like to ask filmmakers. Considering how small Thames is, you might not be able to have a good answer for this, but I like to ask, can you recommend a hometown restaurant?
A hometown restaurant? Well, in the town I live in at the moment, I would suggest a restaurant called Farina.
Where's that?
It's on Ponsonby Road in Auckland. Very good.
But nothing...
In Thames, I think there's like a Thai restaurant, and then there's more of like a sort of a slightly fancier restaurant, but I'm not sure what it's called. But Thames is like people go hunting and fishing, so they cook a lot of their own stuff. So if you go to Thames, I would recommend getting some fish and chips somewhere.
Thank you very much for your time
thank
today.
you.
It was
Thank
a
you so
pleasure
much.
speaking with you, pleasure watching the movie, and I wish you the best of luck with the remaining touring if you're doing any of that. With
Yeah,
the
I got to
film.
fly back to New Zealand tomorrow for the New Zealand premiere. So.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
best of luck with that.
Yeah.